I paid for my sister's whole entire wedding, then found out I wasn't invited. My sister called me crying on a Tuesday afternoon, and somehow that phone call ended up costing me almost $20,000. I wish I was joking. She was engaged to her boyfriend of 3 years, and their wedding was supposed to happen in 6 months. Except everything was falling apart. The venue deposit had gone up. Vendors wanted payments sooner than expected, and apparently they had completely underestimated how expensive weddings actually are. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "Everything is ruined," she kept saying. "I think we might have to cancel it." I asked her how short they were. Big mistake. The second she told me the number, my stomach dropped. It was a lot. Not millionaire level money, but definitely not the kind of amount you casually pull out of your wallet. I told her I needed to think about it. Then she hit me with the guilt trip. "You know Mom and Dad can't help." I just thought family supports family. I would do it for you. Which was funny because she absolutely would not do it for me. But she sounded so devastated that I ignored the little voice in my head, telling me not to get involved. My sister and I had always had a weird relationship. Not horrible, just weird. Growing up, she somehow always got what she wanted. If she forgot homework, someone helped her. If she messed something up, someone fixed it. If she hurt somebody's feelings, everyone explained why she didn't mean it. Meanwhile, if I made one mistake, suddenly I was getting a lecture about responsibility. Classic family stuff. Nothing shocking. So when she needed help with the wedding, everyone immediately looked at me because I was the responsible one, the stable one, the one with savings. Mom called me the same night. "She's your sister." Dad called the next day. Try to be the bigger person. I hadn't even said no. Nobody asked if I wanted to help. They were already acting like I had agreed. A week later, I sat down with my sister and her fiancé to discuss numbers. I expected them to be embarrassed, maybe even grateful. Instead, they immediately started talking about upgrades. Upgrades. Like we were discussing a kitchen remodel instead of the fact they couldn't afford the wedding they already planned. We found a better photographer. We found a nicer floral package. We might switch venues. I remember staring at them thinking, "Are you people hearing yourselves right now?" I finally interrupted. "Can we focus on paying for the wedding you already have first?" There was this awkward silence, then my sister laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh my God, you sound like Dad." That should have been my warning sign. Instead, I agreed to help. Not all at once. I paid deposits. Then another vendor. Then another. Then another. Every time I thought I was done, something new appeared. The caterer needed additional money. The dress needed alterations. The transportation package changed. The guest list grew. The budget somehow kept expanding like a cursed balloon. And every single time my sister had the same response. "You're literally saving the wedding." At first she sounded grateful, then she sounded relieved, then eventually she sounded entitled. That change happened so slowly I almost missed it. Almost one afternoon she called me because she wanted custom welcome bags for guests. I thought she wanted advice. Nope. She wanted my credit card. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "I already designed them," she said. "You just need to pay. Just need to pay," like she was asking me to hand her a pen. I told her no. The silence on the phone got weird immediately. Then she sighed dramatically. "Fine, forget it." That should have been the end of it. Except 20 minutes later my mom called. "Why are you stressing your sister out?" I nearly drove my car into a parking lot just so I could scream in private because somehow I had become the villain for not funding personalized gift bags for people I had never met. The wedding was still 4 months away, and already everyone was acting insane. Then things got worse. My sister started introducing me to people as her wedding sponsor. Not her sister, her sponsor. The first time it happened, I thought I heard wrong. We were meeting one of her friends, and she pointed at me and said, "This is my sister. She's basically paying for everything." The friend looked impressed, then looked at me, then back at her and said, "Wow, must be nice." I laughed awkwardly, because what else do you do? But inside, I was irritated because suddenly, it wasn't about family helping family anymore. Now it felt like a flex. Like she was showing me off. "Look at my sister, she pays for things." A few weeks later, I found out she had started telling people I volunteered. As if I randomly woke up one morning and decided financing somebody else's wedding sounded fun. The best part was that she never corrected anyone, not once. Then came the bridal shower planning, and this is where things started moving from weird to concerning. My sister wanted something huge. Not normal huge, social media huge. She wanted fancy decorations, catered food, custom desserts, rented furniture, professional photos, basically a second event before the actual wedding. The maid of honor finally pushed back. Thank God someone did. She told my sister it was too expensive. My sister immediately responded with, "My sister will cover it." The maid of honor looked confused, then she looked at me. I looked right back at her because this was the first time I was hearing about it. "Excuse me?" I said. My sister froze. For a second nobody spoke. The room got painfully quiet. Then she laughed again. That laugh was becoming my least favorite sound on earth. "Oh my God, I forgot to ask you." Forgot to ask me about spending my money? I told her absolutely not. Her face changed immediately. The smile disappeared and the attitude appeared. "Well, I already told people." I just stared at her. "Okay? You can't back out now. Watch me." The maid of honor looked like she wanted to disappear into the wall. The other bridesmaids suddenly became very interested in their phones. Nobody wanted to be there. My sister rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes like I was the unreasonable one. Then she stormed out. Later that night my mom called. Of course she did. Apparently my sister had spent hours crying. Apparently I embarrassed her. Apparently wedding planning was stressful. Apparently I needed to apologize. I hung up. For the first time during this entire disaster, I hung up on my mother because I was tired. Not just tired physically, emotionally tired. Every conversation felt like I was being pushed closer and closer toward a cliff, and nobody cared because it wasn't their money. The next month was chaos, bills, vendor changes, family arguments, random expenses appearing from nowhere. I kept thinking things would calm down. They didn't. Then one Saturday I was helping organize seating arrangements when my sister casually mentioned something that made me stop mid-sentence. "Don't worry about where you're sitting," I frowned. "What?" She waved her hand. "Your seat?" "What about it?" "Oh, we haven't finalized family seating yet." The way she said it felt strange, really strange. Like she was avoiding something. I asked her what she meant, and she immediately changed the subject. Fast, too fast. At the time I brushed it off, I wish I hadn't. Because a week later, I found out something that made my stomach drop. Something that suddenly explained every weird conversation, every awkward silence, every strange look people had been giving me. And standing in my kitchen holding my phone, I realized there was a very real possibility that after paying for almost everything, I might not even have a place at the wedding. And when I saw the message that proved it, I genuinely thought it had to be a mistake, but it wasn't. And that was the moment everything exploded. The message came from one of my cousins. Not because she was trying to start drama. Actually, the opposite. She thought she was helping. She sent me a screenshot and said, "Hey, I think they forgot to include you on the final guest list." I stared at my phone for a solid 10 seconds because that sentence didn't make any sense. How do you forget the person paying for the wedding? I opened the screenshot. It was a seating chart draft. Tables were labeled. Names were listed. Family members were assigned seats. Friends were assigned seats. Co-workers were assigned seats. Random people I had never even heard of were assigned seats. My name wasn't anywhere. Not one table, not one chair, nothing. At first I genuinely thought it was incomplete. Maybe they hadn't finished it. Maybe I was overreacting. So I texted my sister, "Hey, I don't see my name on the seating chart." She didn't answer for 2 hours, then 4, then 6. Which was weird, because normally she responded immediately when she needed money. Finally she called. The second I answered, I could tell something was off. She sounded nervous, not confused, not surprised, nervous. "Hey," she said. "Hey." Long silence. "Did you see the seating chart?" There it was. No pretending, no asking what I meant. She already knew. "Yeah," I said. "Why isn't my name on it?" Another silence. My stomach dropped because innocent people don't take that long to answer simple questions. Then she finally said it. "Well, we're still figuring some things out." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so ridiculous. "Figuring out what exactly?" "The guest count." "The guest count?" "Yeah." "Then why does everyone else have a seat?" Silence again. At this point I was already annoyed, but I still wasn't prepared for what came next. Finally she sighed. "You know the venue has capacity limits." I blinked. "What does that have to do with me?" We had to make hard decisions. I genuinely thought she was talking about distant relatives, maybe family friends, not me, never me. Then she said it. "We didn't think you'd actually want to come." I almost dropped my phone. "What? You hate weddings?" "I don't hate weddings. You always say they're stressful. I'm paying for this wedding." Another silence. Then she hit me with the most insane explanation I have ever heard in my life. "Well, since you're helping financially, we thought you'd be busy anyway." Busy? On the day of the wedding I was funding, I actually had to sit down because suddenly I felt dizzy. Nothing she was saying made sense. "Wait," I said slowly. "Are you telling me I wasn't invited?" "No, no, no." That immediate panic in her voice told me everything. People don't scramble like that unless they've been caught. "You're twisting my words." "No, I'm repeating your words." "That's not what I meant." "Then explain it." More silence. Then finally, the truth started slipping out. Apparently her guest list had gotten bigger. Way bigger. Friends wanted +1s. Her fiancé wanted co-workers there. Distant relatives wanted invitations. People kept getting added and nobody kept getting removed. Eventually, they ran out of room, so they started cutting people. Guess who made the cut list? Not her fiancé. Not the venue. Not the wedding planner. My sister. And somehow my name ended up on it. I sat there stunned. "Are you serious right now?" It wasn't personal. I nearly threw my phone. Nothing makes me angrier than hearing, "It's not personal," after somebody does something extremely personal. You cut your own sister? You'll still be involved. Involved? Yeah. What does that mean? You can help with setup. I thought I misheard her. Setup? Yeah. Before guests arrive. Before guests arrive. Not during. Not after. Before. Like unpaid staff. Like a volunteer, like somebody delivering tables. My jaw actually dropped. Then she made a huge mistake. A massive mistake. She got irritated, not embarrassed, not apologetic. Irritated. "Well, honestly, you're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be." I felt something inside me snap. Not screaming, not crying, just snapping. That moment where you're suddenly calm because you've reached your limit. "You know what?" I said. "What?" "Send me the final payment schedule." "What?" "The remaining balances." "Why?" "Send them." Now she sounded nervous again. "Why?" "Because if I'm not important enough to get invited, I'm definitely not important enough to keep paying." Silence, dead silence. Then came the panic. "Wait. No. Don't do this. No. Are you serious?" I laughed. "That's what I should be asking you." Then I hung up. For exactly 11 minutes, because that's how long it took for World War III to begin. First my mom called, then my dad, then my aunt, then my grandmother, then 2 cousins. I wish I were exaggerating. My phone looked like I had accidentally announced a family emergency. Apparently, my sister had immediately started calling everyone, and the story she told was incredible. According to her, I was threatening to destroy the wedding because I wasn't getting enough attention. Attention, the woman who wasn't invited was apparently the attention seeker. Makes sense. My mom called crying. My dad sounded exhausted. My grandmother told me weddings make people emotional. Every single person had some version of the same speech. She's your sister. Be the bigger person. Don't ruin her big day. Nobody wanted to address the actual issue. Nobody wanted to explain why I wasn't invited. That part conveniently disappeared. I kept asking the same question. Would you pay for a wedding you couldn't attend? And every single time the conversation got awkward because there wasn't a good answer. A few days later, my sister showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door and immediately knew she had been crying. Her mascara was smeared, her hair was a mess. For 1 second, I almost felt bad. Then she started talking. I can't believe you're doing this. And the feeling disappeared. What am I doing exactly? You know vendors need those payments. Sounds stressful. She stared at me. You promised? No, I helped. Same thing. No, it's not. She stepped inside before I could stop her. Then we spent almost an hour arguing, back and forth, back and forth. Nothing got resolved because every explanation she gave somehow made the situation worse. Eventually, she admitted she'd known for weeks that I wasn't on the guest list. Weeks while still asking me for money. Weeks while sending me vendor invoices. Weeks while discussing decorations. Weeks while pretending everything was normal. That was the moment I stopped feeling guilty completely because this wasn't some misunderstanding anymore. She knew exactly what she was doing and she'd been doing it for a long time. Then she said something that changed everything. Something so unbelievably selfish that even she seemed shocked after it came out of her mouth. The second she said it, I knew there was no coming back from this. Not for the wedding, not for our relationship, and definitely not for the rest of the family. Because if everyone found out what she had just admitted, there was absolutely no way they could defend her anymore. Or at least that's what I thought. For a second after she said it, neither of us spoke. She looked at me, I looked at her. The apartment was completely silent. Then I said, "Can you repeat that?" Because surely I heard her wrong. Surely nobody could actually think like that. She crossed her arms, already defensive, already irritated, and said it again. I figured if you loved me, you'd pay for it anyway. That was it. That was her reasoning. Not gratitude, not family, not appreciation. Love. She genuinely believed that because I loved her, I should keep paying regardless of how she treated me. I actually laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh people do when they can't believe what they're hearing. You really think that's normal? She rolled her eyes. There you go again. There I go again. Making everything transactional. I stared at her completely speechless because apparently the person funding the wedding was the one making things transactional, not the person demanding thousands of dollars while excluding them from the event. The logic was incredible. Then she doubled down. You have money. I blinked. What? You have money and I don't. I couldn't believe it. That was honestly her entire argument. Not that she deserved it, not that she'd pay me back, not that she'd made a mistake. Just, you have money, so give it to me. The conversation went downhill fast after that. Voices got louder. Neither of us was backing down. Eventually, she pointed toward the stack of wedding paperwork on my kitchen counter. You already paid most of it anyway. There it was. The real issue. She thought I was trapped. She thought I had already invested too much money to walk away. And honestly, maybe a month earlier she would have been right, but not anymore. I looked her dead in the eye and said something that wiped the confidence right off her face. I've already emailed every vendor I'm paying directly. The color drained from her face immediately. What? I called them this morning. You what? I told them I won't be making any future payments. Her jaw dropped. The panic started instantly because for the first time she realized I wasn't bluffing. I was done, actually done. Then she started crying, real tears, and for a split second I felt guilty. Then she spoke, and the guilt disappeared again. Do you know how embarrassing this is going to be? Embarrassing, not hurtful, not unfair, not wrong. Embarrassing. Because even now the thing she cared about most was how she looked. I opened my front door. It's time for you to leave. She stared at me. You're kicking me out? Yes. Seriously? Yes. For a second I thought she might apologize, maybe take responsibility, maybe finally understand why I was upset. Instead, she pointed at me and said, "Everyone's going to know you ruined my wedding." Then she walked out, slamming the door hard enough to shake the walls. I stood there for a minute just staring because somehow the entire conversation felt unreal, like I'd stepped into somebody else's life, but I wished the story ended there. It didn't. Because 2 days later my cousin called me and she sounded horrified. Have you checked social media? The second somebody says that sentence, you know nothing good is coming, I opened my phone and there it was. A wedding countdown post from my sister. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. Family members, friends, coworkers, everyone. And buried in the caption was a paragraph that made my blood boil. She thanked her fiancé. She thanked her bridal party. She thanked her parents. She thanked family for helping make the wedding possible. Family. Not me. Family. Like I wasn't the reason half the wedding still existed. Then the comments got worse. People started asking how planning was going, and my sister started replying, "Oh my god, it's been stressful. We've had people trying to sabotage things. Some people don't want to see us happy." I almost threw my phone because everybody knew exactly who she was talking about without saying my name. She was turning me into the villain publicly, and the comments started piling up. People defending her, people sympathizing with her, people talking about toxic relatives. None of them knew the truth. Not one. I tried ignoring it for about 6 hours. Then my aunt called and accidentally made everything worse. Apparently my sister had been telling relatives that she'd paid me back. Paid me back. I nearly choked. What? Wait, my aunt said. She didn't? No. The silence after that was incredible because suddenly my aunt realized she'd been lied to. Then more information started coming out. A cousin thought I'd been reimbursed. Another relative thought I was just helping with decorations. One family friend thought I had donated a few $100s. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody. Because my sister had been giving everyone different versions of the story, whatever made her look best, whatever made me look unreasonable. And that's when something unexpected happened. People started talking, family members compared stories, conversations started happening, questions started getting asked. Tiny cracks started appearing in the narrative she'd built. At first it was just confusion, then concern, then suspicion. And my sister noticed fast because suddenly she started calling people nonstop, trying to get ahead of it, trying to control the situation, trying to keep everyone on her side, which only made things look worse. Then came the wedding shower, the one she wanted me to pay for months earlier, the one I refused to fund, and somehow I still got dragged into it. Not because I attended, I didn't, but because something happened there that completely blew up the family. A relative stood up during a toast and thanked me publicly in front of everybody for helping make the wedding happen. Nobody expected it, least of all my sister. And according to 3 different people who were there, the room got very quiet, very fast, because suddenly everyone wanted to know exactly how much help I'd provided, and my sister made a huge mistake. Instead of answering honestly, she lied again. A lie so obvious, so ridiculous, that even people who normally defended her started questioning it. And once that happened, the entire wedding started unraveling. According to my cousin, the whole thing started during what was supposed to be a sweet speech. One of my older relatives stood up with a glass in her hand and started talking about family support, normal wedding shower stuff. Everybody was smiling, everybody was listening. Then she said, "And of course we should all thank her sister for everything she's done to help make this wedding possible." Simple, harmless, true. Except apparently my sister reacted like someone had set off a fire alarm. My cousin said her smile disappeared immediately, not gradually. Immediately people noticed. Then somebody asked the obvious question, how much did she help with? And that's where everything went wrong, because instead of giving a vague answer and moving on, my sister decided to lie. She laughed and said, "Oh, not much." Not much. The room got quiet because several people there had already heard different versions of the story. Then somebody else asked, "Wait, didn't she pay for the venue?" My sister shook her head. "No, she just helped with deposits." Wrong. Another person jumped in. "I thought she paid for the photographer." Nope. Wrong again. Then somebody else spoke up. "I heard she covered catering too." My sister laughed, actually laughed, and said, "People keep exaggerating." That was the moment things started falling apart because several guests were now comparing information in real time, out loud, right in front of everyone, and the stories weren't matching at all. One person heard I'd contributed a few $100s, another heard a few thousand. Someone else thought I'd only helped with decorations. The more people talked, the worse it got. Then my aunt accidentally dropped a bomb. "Well, I thought she paid for most of it." Silence. My cousin said you could practically feel the tension because now everyone was looking at my sister waiting, and she panicked badly. Instead of clearing things up, she snapped, "She didn't pay for most of it." Too loud, too defensive, too fast. The room got awkward instantly. Then someone asked the question she didn't want to answer. How much did she actually pay? My sister couldn't answer. Not without admitting the truth, so she changed the subject, which made everything look even worse. And from that moment on, people started talking. Not arguing, not fighting. Talking. The dangerous kind. The quiet conversations in corners. The whispered questions. The little exchanges when somebody realizes something doesn't make sense. By the time the shower ended, half the family was confused and the other half was suspicious. I found all of this out through phone calls. A lot of phone calls. Apparently my name became the main topic of conversation after the event, which was ironic considering I wasn't even there. Then things got worse. 3 days later, my mom showed up at my apartment. She looked exhausted. Like genuinely exhausted. I invited her inside. She sat down, and for the first minute, neither of us said anything. Finally, she sighed. A long sigh. The kind people make when they're realizing they've backed the wrong person. Then she asked me a question. "How much have you actually spent?" I almost laughed because nobody had asked me that before. Not once. Everyone had opinions. Everyone had advice. Nobody had asked for facts. So I showed her, not dramatically, not angrily. I just opened my laptop, pulled up payment confirmations, vendor invoices, transfers, deposits, receipts, and turned the screen toward her. At first she looked confused, then concerned, then pale. I watched her expression change with every number because for the first time she was seeing reality, not my sister's version. Reality. When she finally looked up, she seemed stunned. "This is real?" I just nodded. She sat back in her chair completely speechless. Then came the question I'd been waiting weeks to hear. "Why wasn't she inviting you?" And honestly, that hurt more than everything else because it meant my mother finally understood how insane the situation actually was. For several minutes, she didn't say anything. Then she quietly admitted something. My sister had never told her I wasn't invited. Not directly. She'd implied there were guest list issues, space limitations, complicated logistics, but she'd never actually said, "I'm removing my sister while taking her money," because even she knew how bad that sounded. Mom left my apartment looking shaken, and apparently she called my sister immediately because less than an hour later, my phone exploded again. Texts, calls, voicemails, everything. My sister was furious, absolutely furious. "How dare you turn Mom against me?" I stared at the message because the idea that facts were somehow manipulation was honestly impressive. I ignored her. Then another message arrived. "You knew exactly what you were doing." Ignored. Then another. "You always have to make yourself the victim." Ignored. Then another. "You've ruined everything." That one made me laugh because every disaster in this story somehow became my fault. The guest list, my fault. The payments, my fault. The family arguments, my fault. The lies, apparently, also my fault. A few relatives finally started reaching out privately, not to attack me, to ask questions, actual questions, and the second people started asking questions. My sister lost control of the narrative fast because lies are hard to maintain when everyone is comparing notes. Then came the family dinner. The dinner that was supposed to clear the air. Anytime someone says those words, disaster is usually 5 minutes away. My parents organized it. They invited immediate family. My sister agreed. I agreed. Everyone claimed they wanted peace. Nobody got peace. The second I walked in, I could feel the tension. People were smiling too hard, talking too politely, avoiding eye contact. Classic family disaster behavior. Dinner lasted maybe 20 minutes before somebody brought up the wedding. And after that, everything exploded because for the first time, everyone was in the same room. And for the first time, nobody could control who asked what. My sister tried. She really tried. But then one simple question changed the entire night. A question from someone she never expected. A question so direct that even she couldn't dodge it. And when she finally answered, the room went completely silent. The question came from my dad, which shocked everybody, including me because my dad hated confrontation. This man would rather sit through 3 hours of awkward silence than start an argument. So when he put his fork down and looked directly at my sister, the entire table noticed. What exactly was your plan? The room went quiet. My sister blinked. What do you mean? Dad didn't look away. I mean, what was your plan? Still silence. Then he continued. You accepted her money. My sister shifted in her chair. You asked for her help. More silence. You kept asking for more help. Now she looked uncomfortable. Then Dad asked the question. The wedding day comes, she's not invited, then what? Nobody spoke. Not a single person. Because it was such a simple question, and somehow nobody had asked it before. My sister opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, nothing came out. Dad waited. The longer she stayed silent, the worse it got. Finally she shrugged. Actually shrugged and said, I don't know. The reaction around the table was immediate. People exchanged looks, confused looks, concerned looks. Because that wasn't an answer, that was an admission. She genuinely hadn't thought it through. Or maybe she had and didn't want to say it out loud. Neither option was good. Then my aunt asked, You were just going to let her find out? My sister looked irritated. That's not what happened. Then what happened? Nobody raised their voice. Not yet. Which somehow made it more uncomfortable because now everybody wanted specifics. My sister hated specifics. Specifics were where her story fell apart. She started talking about guest limits again. Venue capacity, wedding stress, miscommunication, all the usual excuses. Then my cousin interrupted. You invited Brittany, though. My sister froze. Everybody knew Brittany, a coworker she'd known for 6 months. The silence that followed was brutal because suddenly people were doing math. Limited space but room for coworkers. Limited space but room for plus ones. Limited space but not room for the person funding the wedding. It wasn't adding up and everybody knew it. Then she made another mistake. A huge one. Instead of apologizing, she got defensive. You guys are acting like she's the only person who matters. The second those words left her mouth. I knew she was done because nobody had said that. Not one person. The issue wasn't that I mattered more than everyone else. The issue was that she was treating me worse than everyone else, even strangers. And deep down she knew it. Mom looked horrified. Dad looked disappointed, which honestly seemed to hit harder. Then my grandmother spoke very quietly. Did you thank her? The question sounded simple, but it landed like a truck because suddenly everybody realized something. My sister had spent months talking about wedding stress, months talking about planning, months talking about money, but nobody could remember her actually thanking me. Not properly, not once. My sister stared at the table, then mumbled. Of course I did. Except she hadn't, at least not in any meaningful way. And everyone knew it. The conversation spiraled after that. People started asking more questions. Who paid for what? When? How much? Why? The details started coming out one by one, and every answer made things worse. Then somebody asked about the final vendor payments, and my sister accidentally revealed something she definitely wasn't supposed to reveal. Apparently, she had already promised several vendors that I would cover the remaining balances without asking me. Again, the entire table went silent. I actually laughed because at that point, what else was I supposed to do? My dad looked stunned. Are you serious? My sister immediately tried backtracking. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Nobody was letting her dodge questions anymore. Not tonight, not after everything. For the first time, she couldn't hide behind emotional speeches. For the first time, people wanted actual answers and she didn't have them. Then the conversation turned ugly fast. Voices got louder, people started interrupting each other, family members took sides, some still defended her, others stopped. A few just looked exhausted. The dinner completely collapsed. At one point, 3 separate conversations were happening at the same time. Nobody was listening to anybody. Then my sister stood up hard enough that her chair scraped across the floor. Everyone stopped talking. She looked around the room, furious, embarrassed, cornered. Then she pointed directly at me. You happy now? There it was, the villain speech. Except it wasn't dramatic, it was pathetic because even now she was blaming me for consequences she created herself. I looked right at her and asked one question. Would you have invited me if nobody found out? The room froze. She didn't answer. That told everyone everything. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out. The front door slammed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke for a solid 10 seconds. The silence was honestly worse than the screaming, because everyone was processing what had just happened. Finally, my grandmother shook her head and said, I don't recognize her anymore. That one hurt because if there was one person my sister adored, it was our grandmother, and hearing that clearly affected her, at least according to the 30 angry texts she sent later. But the dinner wasn't the end. Not even close. Because 2 days after that disaster, something happened that pushed the entire situation from family drama into public humiliation. For my sister, not me. And the crazy part was I wasn't even trying to get revenge. I didn't post anything. I didn't expose her. I didn't tell the world what happened. Someone else did, completely on their own. And when that happened, all the people my sister had been lying to for months suddenly started asking questions at the exact same time. Questions she couldn't answer. Questions that led directly to the biggest confrontation of the entire wedding. A confrontation that happened less than 2 weeks before the ceremony. In front of guests, in front of family, and in front of people she desperately wanted to impress. And once that confrontation started, there was no stopping it. A week after the family dinner, I thought things couldn't possibly get worse. I was wrong, very wrong. Because that's when I found out what my sister had been telling vendors. And the discovery happened completely by accident when one of the photographers called me. At first I assumed it was about a payment issue. Instead she said something that made my stomach drop. Your sister wanted to confirm your arrival time. I frowned. My arrival time? Yeah, for setup. Setup? Immediately I felt sick because nobody should be discussing my arrival time at a wedding I wasn't even invited to. So I asked the photographer to explain, and every sentence somehow got worse. Apparently my sister had told several vendors that I would be helping coordinate things on the wedding day. Greeting vendors, handling last-minute payments, checking guest arrivals, managing emergencies, basically doing all the stressful jobs nobody else wanted. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wasn't a guest, I wasn't family, I wasn't even invited, I was unpaid staff. And the craziest part was that nobody knew, because the vendors genuinely thought this was my role. That's what my sister had told them. I hung up and immediately started making calls. Not angry calls, confused calls, because I wanted to know if this was one misunderstanding or something bigger. It was bigger. Way bigger. Every vendor told me the same thing. They all believed I'd be working the wedding, not attending it, working it. One vendor even asked where I wanted the emergency binder delivered. Emergency binder. I almost laughed. The woman funding the wedding was apparently expected to spend the entire day solving problems while everybody else celebrated. Then I found out the worst part. When one vendor casually mentioned the seating chart, I asked what she meant and she said, "Oh, your sister said you didn't need a seat because you'd be moving around all day." For a second I genuinely couldn't speak because suddenly everything made sense. The missing invitation, the weird answers, the strange comments, the avoided conversations. She wasn't planning to invite me later. She had already decided what my role would be. The help, the worker, the person paying for everything while everyone else enjoyed the wedding. And somehow she thought that was acceptable. I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes trying to process it. Then she made a massive mistake. She sent me another invoice. Not a text, not an apology. An invoice. $3,000 for final catering payments. No explanation, just a message saying, "Need this by Friday." And that was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped because after everything she still thought I'd pay, she still thought I was trapped. She still thought she could keep taking. And for the first time since this whole disaster started, I stopped protecting her. I took a screenshot, not to post online, not to embarrass her. I sent it directly to my parents, then my grandmother, then my aunt. Just the screenshot and nothing else. Within an hour, my phone started exploding because for the first time, everyone saw exactly what was happening. Not my version, not her version, the truth. And the second they saw it, the family stopped arguing about whether she made a mistake and started asking a much bigger question. How long had she been planning this? And when my father confronted her that night, he held up the screenshot and asked, "What exactly were you expecting here?" My sister immediately started crying, which would have worked a month earlier, not anymore. Everybody was tired, too much had happened, too many stories had changed, too many excuses had appeared. Dad didn't raise his voice, he just repeated the question, and that's when she admitted it. Not intentionally, she got frustrated and blurted out, "I thought she'd help because she always does." Complete silence because there it was, the truth. Not gratitude, expectation, not appreciation, entitlement. She expected me to keep helping because I'd always helped before. My grandmother stood up and quietly asked, "Did you ever plan to thank her?" My sister didn't answer because deep down she knew what everyone else was finally realizing. She had stopped seeing my help as a gift months ago and started seeing it as something she deserved, something she was owed. The argument got worse from there. Family members started asking real questions, not about the wedding but about her behavior, the money, the invitation, and why she thought any of this was okay. And eventually she admitted something that stunned everybody. Apparently she'd been telling people different stories because she was embarrassed. Not embarrassed about taking my money, embarrassed that she needed my money, which somehow made her resent me. The person helping her, nobody knew what to say because it was such a backwards way of thinking, but it explained everything. The guest list, the lies, the attitude, the way she acted every time someone mentioned me, and then 2 days later another bombshell dropped when her fiancé found out about the vendor calls, the setup duties, the emergency binder, the missing seat, everything. And apparently he had absolutely no idea, which meant my sister had never told him the full plan. Not once. When he found out, he called her immediately, and the conversation was a disaster because he asked a simple question. Why would she be working the wedding? And my sister somehow made everything worse by answering, she wasn't doing anything else. The woman paying for the wedding apparently wasn't doing anything else. Her fiancé was stunned, then angry, then stunned again as more details came out, and finally he asked, "Were you ever going to tell her?" And when she couldn't answer, that was all he needed because a few hours later he requested a complete financial breakdown of the wedding. Every expense, every payment, every deposit, everything. And when those numbers came back, the entire situation exploded because for the first time everyone saw exactly how much I'd actually paid. Not rumors, not guesses, the real number. And people were shocked. Even her fiancé had assumed they'd contributed far more than they actually had. They hadn't. Without my money, there practically wasn't a wedding. And suddenly everyone was asking the same question. If I'd paid for so much, why was I being treated like hired help? Nobody had an answer, least of all my sister. Then came the engagement party, the final disaster. The event that destroyed any chance of keeping this private. Because one of my sister's friends walked up and casually told me she was excited that I'd finally get to relax after all the wedding work. I frowned and asked what wedding work, and she explained that my sister had been telling people I was coordinating everything and running the wedding day schedule. Then another friend joined in and mentioned I was handling all the logistics, and suddenly people nearby started listening. Then someone asked the obvious question, if she's doing all that, when does she get to enjoy the wedding? Another person asked if I was sitting with family, and nobody answered because nobody knew except me and my sister. Then she walked into the conversation and I looked directly at her and asked, am I? The room froze, then I followed up with, where exactly am I sitting? And after a long silence, she gave the worst answer possible. You don't need a seat. Boom. Just like that, in front of everyone. No excuses, no guest limit story, no venue capacity explanation, just the truth, and the reaction was immediate. People looked horrified. One friend even laughed because she thought it was a joke before realizing nobody else was laughing. Then my sister tried to recover by saying I'd be busy helping anyway, which somehow made it worse because now everybody understood. I wasn't a guest, I wasn't seated with family, I was expected to work, expected to pay, and expected to smile about it. The room erupted into questions, confusion, shock, disbelief, and then one coworker asked, wait, she's paying for the wedding too? Nobody answered because nobody had to, and suddenly nobody defended my sister anymore because there was no defense left. Then she completely lost control and shouted, she always makes me look bad. And that sentence revealed everything. She wasn't angry that I'd helped, she was angry that people knew I'd helped. And the second everyone understood that, the narrative she'd spent months building collapsed right there in front of dozens of guests and right in front of her fiancé, who stepped forward and asked, were you ever planning to treat her like family? The silence afterward was devastating because nobody wanted to hear the answer, and when she couldn't give one, the wedding's fate was basically sealed.